Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today's topic is about knives again, and this time it's about sharpening in particular. So first off, this knife is pretty dull, and as you can see, the edge is a little bit damaged. There are two chips and some rolling, so it's pretty dull. But just to make sure, I'm going to take this whetstone in the dry status that it actually is, and just going to run this over and really dull it for a test. Even with a cheap knife, this hurts kind of. Feels just wrong to do this. Okay, now it's totally dull. Okay, let me get the paper. Okay, there's absolutely no edge on it left, just a dead piece of steel. And as you can see, there is a pretty big chip there, and we'll see how we get this done. Okay, so first item to sharpen our knife is another knife, and the knife we're going to use is this Mora Companion, and the reason for that is it's a lot harder than this one. I don't know the exact hardness of this, but I think it's somewhere in the mid-50s, and I know for a fact that this one is 60 Rockwell, so it's definitely harder. So we're just going to run this around the sharp back of this to give it a first, a first glance basically. So just run this knife around the back, over the back. And this blade is really messed up. I don't know if you can see this through the camera, but there is already a first shine on it. So not all hope is lost. And you should only do this kind of technique if your blade is really beat up, because this takes a lot of the material away. And if you have still some kind of a workable edge, don't do this. This is just for emergency purposes, or if your blade is really torn up. Okay, so well, it's not sharp, but there's definitely some life in it, you could say. So let me get a fresh piece and give this a cut. You can already see we have a good clean cut on this. It's not perfect by any means, but again, it's workable. Okay, here we have a tear. Okay, but you definitely get the idea. So the second item we're going to use, let me get this assortment out of the way, is ceramic. You can use a mug like this one, or you can use something like this, or a bowl, whatever. Just make sure that the surface you're going to use is non-glazed. So we want the pure ceramic on here to run our knife across. And I'll start off with this cup. I usually give it about 10 strokes on each side, and then I switch over. And like always, keep the angle as consistent as you can, and always do the same amount of strokes on each side. Okay, now I'm out of count, but I think that's 10. So we'll give it another 10. Personally, I find it easier to use a bowl than a mug, but that's just my personal preference, so you can discover this for yourself. Okay, and now we gave it 10 strokes on each side. We are back to the paper. and as you can see, it's getting better and better. There. And if we take a close look at the edge, there's still some indentation of the chip, but I think it's a little bit smaller than on the beginning of our test. We could run this a lot more often over the knife bag, so that enough metal is removed to get out the chip out of here, but that's really deep, and well, that's not what we want. We just want a workable edge that we can use for free. Okay, so just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to use this, and we give it another few extra strokes right here, and the bigger the surface area is, the better is it, at least in my opinion, because you can run the whole knife length over it without angling the mark or whatever you're using. And I'm using some pressure on here, not so much, but enough to definitely control it and to hopefully keep the angle always the same. Okay, but now the edge looks already usable, so we are back to the paper. Yes, by now it really cuts. You can always see the part where the chip of the blade is. That's always the few fibers sticking out in the middle here. Like I said, we could work this out, but I don't want to. I just want to give you the idea of how to sharpen your knife. Okay, so by now you could stop. You already reached your goal of usable edge, but I want to take it a step further. So we are going to do the next step, and this is basically rough stropping. This is just a standard piece of cardboard from my most favorite Italy pizza man. So we're just going to do some stropping here. Just let me get all this out of the way. And I will use this to stabilize it a little bit. Okay, now we are running the knife blade away from the motion, basically. I hope you you get what I wanted to say. And this is, like I said, rough stropping. I usually do this 10 times, then switch over and do another 10. Okay, now switch over. Okay. And cardboard is actually a good choice for this task, because if you cut cardboard, and you probably do this with your knife, every day I do it in work, this really abuses your knife and gets it dulled pretty soon. So this is really good at getting back a good edge on your knife. Okay. I'm not a professional knife sharpener or anything, so there are probably better videos out there than this one, but this is especially for a viewer request of a good friend of mine from Waddac2 on YouTube here. So I'm definitely going to put the link to his channel in the description. Check that out. He's mostly doing lockpicking videos. It's very, very interesting, so pretty cool. Greetings to you, Waddac2. Okay. Should be enough. So we're back to the paper. Nice. Very nice slicing, okay. Just turn this a little bit. And as you can see, hopefully, hang on for a second. So you can see the, the indentation of the chip is getting less and less dramatical in this cut. It's getting cleaner and cleaner. And if we take a look at the blade now, it's still there, but it's kind of, well, rounded off and worked a little bit. So, very nice. If you for some reason don't have access to cardboard, I usually take a book like this, or whatever, doesn't have to be Matt Graham to be that kind of cool, and just run the knife around the back side of it. You probably will have to do this more often than on real cardboard because the surface is a lot smoother and less abrasive, but it gets the job done if you repeatedly do this. So we're just going to give this a few extra strokes, and if you do it right, you're not going to damage your book. Okay, should be enough. Then back to the paper. Okay. By now it's no miracle that the knife cuts pretty well. I think that's okay. And then we can do one final step, and that's fine stropping in 2 steps. So here I have a leather belt, and usually the inside is a little rougher than the outside with a nice clean finish. So we are going to use this piece of wood again. Just put on the belt, like so, and then again run the knife over it, and always pull away the sharp edge from the material if you're stropping, and then I usually give it about 10 to each side, switch over, do it again, so about 20 times in total, and then we switch over to the fine side, which is the wearable front, and we do the same thing. And stropping is no, well, pure sharpening technique, just to touch up the blade and give it the final finish. So if you have a totally beat up blade, like if you were on an outdoor tour or used your survival knife, pretty abusive, then this is not the way to sharpen the entire knife. This is just to touch up a blade that's already sharp or that has a usable sharpness, and you just want to increase it a little bit. Okay, by now we have that, and now we are just going to turn over the belt to the fine side. That's usually outside, so facing the person that's watching you, and we're just going to repeat the process. And make sure that you get all the way up to the tip, because what I found out when I learned basically how to sharpen a knife, I only got to this point and then I let go. So I basically always had a dull tip and a very sharp edge, which was kind of uncool, because some finer work is best done by the tip. So just grab the blade, choke up on it, support it a little bit. This way, especially for beginners, you get a very, very good controlled swing to get basically everything over this edge. Okay, I forgot to count again. I'm not the greatest multitasker on this planet Earth, but I think you get the idea. Okay, and here I have a fresh piece of paper, and we're just going to take a look at this, and wow, that's just nice. And if you take a look at it, you won't be able to tell that there's even a chip in this knife, and if you look here, it's still there. So the blade is really sharp. I mean, it's not razor sharp by any means, but it's very, very good usable. And even if we, well, I messed this cut up. Okay, now if we really put it on there, there's still an indentation where the chip is, but the performance of the knife is really good by now. Okay, this was a way for free. You don't have to have anything basically. Everyone has a mug in his house, a leather belt. By the way, it doesn't have to be leather. You could also do this with a nylon belt, but leather works really good. Well, everyone has this book, certainly not this, but any kind of book. You probably will also have a knife, a very hard knife for the hard cases. If not, just go ahead, use your mug. You will have to run the knife, of course, a lot more and intense than using the knife, but hey, it's definitely a way to do it. And if you want to spend some money, but not much, you get a few of these. Get yourself a fine grit sandpaper set, and you basically need 3 types. So let me turn this over. I have a 400 grit, a 600 grit, and a 1200 grit. You could also step it up and put a 800 in between, or for the hard cases, a 280 or a 320 for the start. And what you essentially do is take any kind of, well, wood or whatever, or again your book, then take the sandpaper, wrap it around so that you have a edge that you could run this over, and then repeat the process. And on the final stage where you have your 1200 grit sandpaper, you could also do the stropping motion just to touch it up a little more. And you could also get a even finer grit sandpaper. There are up to 3,000, I believe, in the car care department for polishing, etc. So super fine, and you can get a workable edge for, I don't know, these cost about 89 cents each. So let's say for 5 or 6 euros, that's not a huge investment, and you got a really good sharpened knife. Okay, thank you for watching. I hope you found this helpful. Like always, bye.